All right, so get this. Today, we're doing a deep dive that might actually flip your ideas about tech and poverty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're looking at how those, simple, dumb phones, the ones maybe we even have stuck in a drawer somewhere,
Right.
they're actually making a huge difference in fighting extreme poverty.
It's kind of wild, right? It almost feels like too good to be true.
Well, it does. So how do these, basic phones even fit into all this?
Well, it all comes down to this thing called mobile money. So picture this. Sending and receiving money just by using, like, text messages.
Okay.
No internet needed, no bank account, just a really basic phone.
Hmm.
It sounds simple, but it's a huge deal, especially for people in areas where, like regular banks, they're just not accessible.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how that could be a game changer, but how common is this mobile money thing?
Oh, way more than you'd think. I mean, get this. 1.6 billion people around the world use it.
Wow.
And in tons of places, it's actually surpassing, like, traditional banking.
That's honestly mind-blowing. So that's more people than even having accounts.
Yeah, it really puts things into perspective.
It does, it does. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how it works, let's step back for a second and actually define what we're even talking about with extreme poverty.
Absolutely. So we're talking about people who live on, get this, less than $2.15 a day.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, like, imagine trying to pay for everything, food, housing, healthcare, all of it, on less than, like, what, a cup of coffee costs?
Yeah.
It's a reality for over 700 million people globally. And escaping that cycle, it can feel impossible.
So traditional aid, like just giving cash or building infrastructure, that hasn't always worked out.
It can help, for sure, but there are always these limitations, like cash, well, that can get stolen.
Right.
And building banks takes forever, costs a ton of money, and a lot of people in these areas just don't have a bank anywhere nearby or the means to even get to one. The traditional systems, they often just miss the people who need help the most.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how did this mobile money thing even start? Was it some tech genius in Silicon Valley?
Actually, it's a super cool story of grassroots innovation. It all started organically in Kenya. People there, they were trading mobile phone airtime credits, like informally, as a kind of currency.
Wait, really? Like using minutes as cash?
Exactly. They basically created their own system of value exchange using something they already had, their phone minutes.
That's really clever.
Right. And some developers noticed this, and that's how M-Pesa was born.
M-Pesa.
Yeah, it means mobile money in Swahili. They took this informal practice and made it into an actual, like, formal system.
Okay, so walk me through it. Is it super complicated to use?
Not at all. Think of it like banking, but you do it with text messages. You don't need internet, you don't need a fancy smartphone, or even a bank account. Just a basic phone, which, by the way, are way more common than smartphones in a lot of parts of the world.
So how do people actually, get the cash?
They have these local agents, kind of like human ATMs, all over the place. You can deposit or withdraw cash through them, so even people in remote areas can use it.
That's such a smart way to use what's already there, the existing infrastructure. So now we have the system, but what kind of impact are we actually seeing on the ground?
To really get that, let's look at an organization called GiveDirectly.
Okay.
They're a nonprofit. And they use mobile money to send cash straight to people in extreme poverty, like no middleman, no bureaucracy.
Oh, wow. So no funding projects or going through all those layers, just money straight to the people who need it. That's bold. How do they even decide who gets the money?
They use technology in a really interesting way.
Okay.
GiveDirectly uses AI, satellite imagery, and data analysis to find specific villages where poverty is most severe.
You're telling me they can pinpoint need from space?
Yeah, that's the power of this tech.
That's incredible. So it's like cutting edge tech combined with a very human approach.
Right. And once they identify a village, they send a lump sum of $1,100 directly to each household through mobile money straight to their phones. In a lot of cases, that's like a whole year's income for a family.
That's life-changing money. I can see how this would have a big impact, beyond just immediate needs.
Exactly. And the results are really promising. Like in Kenya, for instance, because of mobile money and this direct cash approach, 192,000 people were able to escape extreme poverty. It's not just about having money, it's about what that money lets them do.
Yeah.
Like save, invest in their future, build some financial security.
That's incredible. It sounds like this approach is really giving people the power to control their own lives.
It is.
But is Kenya a one-off? Are we seeing this in other countries too?
Oh yeah, Kenya was a pioneer, but the impact's being felt way beyond.
Okay.
Like in Rwanda, families are using these cash transfers to invest in things like better housing, livestock, even education for their kids.
Wow. So it's not just individual success stories, it's changing entire communities. This is all pretty amazing. But before we get too far, I'm kind of curious about the bigger picture. Like, how does all this mobile money stuff compare to the traditional aid that's being sent?
Okay, so this is where it gets even more interesting.
Yeah.
The amount of money being sent through mobile money to Africa specifically now actually surpasses all the traditional aid going to the continent.
Really?
We're talking about over $50 billion every year.
Wow. So this isn't just changing individual lives, it's like reshaping the whole global aid system.
It really is.
But are there specific examples of how it's being used, like mobile money combined with technology, to actually deliver aid in new ways?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One that stands out is the COVID response in Togo.
Oh, okay.
So they needed to get aid to vulnerable communities and fast.
Yeah.
The government partnered with GiveDirectly, and they used this combination of satellite imagery and mobile phone data to find and help the people who needed it most.
So they were basically mapping out poverty and sending help right where it was needed.
Exactly. And get this, they were able to deliver aid within minutes.
Minutes. That's incredible. With traditional aid, it would take weeks, if not months.
It's a perfect example of how technology can be used for good, especially in a crisis.
But the Togo thing, that was reactive. Is there a way to use this technology proactively, like to help prevent disasters before they even happen?
Absolutely. We talked about Kenya and Rwanda, but let's look at Nigeria. They use these sophisticated flood prediction models and mobile money to send cash to villages that were prone to flooding. And they did it days before the floods even hit.
Wow, that's thinking ahead.
Right. So families could prepare, get supplies, maybe even evacuate, which really reduced how vulnerable they were.
That's amazing. It's not just reacting to disaster, it's preventing it. But let's be real, with any new system, there are going to be worries. What are people saying about mobile money? Like, what about fraud? Is that a big problem?
Yeah, fraud's a concern with any financial system, but with mobile money, the fraud rates are super low. GiveDirectly estimates that less than 1% of their transfers are lost to fraud.
Less than 1%. That's really low. Why is it so much lower with mobile money?
It's because it's digital. Every transaction leaves a digital trail, so it's much easier to track and trace anything suspicious. It's actually more secure than a lot of traditional methods that use cash.
That's interesting. It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense. Okay, so fraud's not a huge issue. What about inflation? Like, if you're suddenly adding all this money into an economy, wouldn't prices just go up and kind of cancel out any good?
That's another common worry, but again, the evidence shows something different. GiveDirectly did a study in Kenya. They gave $1,000 to over 10,000 households, and inflation only went up by 0.1%.
0.1%. That's nothing. Why such a small effect?
It's about the context of the economy. In these smaller local economies, adding cash doesn't have the same effect as it might in a bigger, more developed one. Like, remember the stimulus packages in the US and other developed countries during the pandemic?
Yeah.
Those did cause some inflation because those economies were already running pretty close to their limit.
That makes sense. It's not just the amount of money, it's about the specific economic situation. So we talked about the economics, but what about the social impact? Are there any, like, unexpected things that happen when a whole community starts getting these direct cash transfers?
Yeah, actually, one fascinating thing is this idea of community accountability.
Okay.
When everyone in a village gets these transfers, they naturally see how their neighbors are using the money.
So if someone's spending it on, I don't know, something frivolous and their neighbor's investing in a business or their kid's education, there's pressure to be responsible.
Yeah, this transparency actually motivates people to make good choices with their money.
That's really interesting. It's amazing how this one thing can have such a big impact, not just on individuals, but on the whole community. This really challenges that old saying, teach a man to fish, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. The evidence is showing that giving people cash directly and trusting them to make the best decisions for themselves and their families, it can actually be much more effective than telling them what to do or setting up specific projects.
It's about giving them the power, not controlling them. And what blows me away is that all this is happening because of a technology that, like, a lot of us think is outdated, the dumb phone.
It shows that tech doesn't have to be fancy or complicated to make a difference. Sometimes the simplest tools, when used the right way, can have the biggest impact.
Okay, so we covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive.
We did.
We've seen how mobile money is empowering people, changing communities, even changing how we think about aid.
Yeah,
But we also saw that it's not perfect, and we have to think about things like data privacy, regulation, making sure everyone has access.
for sure.
I'm really curious to hear more about the research behind this and whether it's really as effective as it seems.
Yeah, it's definitely important to look past just the individual stories and see what the data actually says.
Yeah.
And when you look at direct cash transfers, the research is actually super solid and convincing. In fact, this whole area of research, it was so groundbreaking, it actually won a Nobel Prize.
Wait, seriously. A Nobel Prize for studying cash transfers. Tell me more about that.
So in 2019, the Nobel Prize in Economics went to these three researchers, Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo, and Michael Kramer, for their work on fighting global poverty. They did something really interesting. They used these things called randomized controlled trials.
Like scientific experiments.
Exactly. They wanted to see how effective different anti-poverty programs actually were.
So they weren't just going off of gut feeling or good intentions, they were using actual data.
Right. And one of the things they found, which might surprise some people, is that giving cash directly to people in poverty, it consistently led to better results than the traditional programs that focused on giving specific goods or services.
That's fascinating. It seems a little counterintuitive. What kind of better result are we talking about here?
Okay, so there's this one study they did in Kenya. It's a great example. They gave a one-time cash transfer of $500 to a group of households and then just tracked what happened. The results were pretty amazing.
Okay, like what?
Business revenues in the villages that got the cash, they went up by a whopping 65%.
65%. So it wasn't just about meeting those immediate needs. It was about giving them a way to invest in the future, start businesses, boost the whole local economy.
Exactly. And there were other big changes too. They saw a 20% increase in new businesses being created.
Wow.
And get this, the income that came from self-employment, it shot up by 141%.
It's incredible how something so seemingly simple can unlock that kind of potential. It really flips that whole give a man a fish idea on its head.
It does. It's all about recognizing that people living in poverty are resourceful and capable. You give them the resources, and they'll find amazing ways to improve their lives and their communities.
It's not a handout, it's empowerment. But these studies you're talking about, they focused a lot on the economic side of things. What about other impacts, like on education or health?
That's a great question. The research actually found that the good stuff from these cash transfers went way beyond just economics. School attendance went up by 14%.
That's great.
And maybe even more importantly, they saw a significant drop in depression and a big improvement in mental health for the people who got the money.
That's really powerful. It's like financial security is tied to overall well-being, not just having money in the bank. But how long did these benefits actually last? Was it just a temporary boost, or did things actually change for good?
The research team kept following these families. And the amazing thing is, even 2 years after they got the cash, those positive effects were still there.
So it wasn't just a quick fix, it was a foundation for real, lasting change.
Exactly.
It really makes you rethink that idea that people in poverty will just waste any cash they get.
It does. When you trust people and give them what they need, they're much more likely to make smart decisions, ones that benefit them and their families over the long term.
And what's so cool is that this approach uses technology that's already widely available in a lot of these communities.
Right. Mobile money makes it possible to send those transfers directly to people, securely and efficiently, even in the most remote places.
It's like the perfect mix of good policy, scientific backing, and technology that's ready to go.
Exactly.
It's a really compelling model for making a difference. But earlier you mentioned this approach is being used for other global challenges too. What did you mean by that?
Oh, yeah. Think about disaster relief. When a natural disaster hits, getting help to the people who need it most, it can be a logistical nightmare, like damaged roads, transportation systems that aren't working, all the bureaucratic hurdles. It makes it really tough to deliver aid quickly.
Especially in those hard-to-reach places or countries that don't have a lot of resources to begin with, it can seem impossible.
Exactly. But mobile money gives you a way to get around a lot of those obstacles.
Mm.
Aid organizations can send money straight to people's phones, even if roads are blocked or bridges are washed out. It cuts through all the red tape and makes sure people get help when they need it most.
That could be a literal lifesaver in those first few days after a disaster, when food, water, and shelter are the most important things.
It can.
Are there any real-world examples of this in action?
Definitely. After that horrible earthquake in Haiti back in 2010, Mobile money platforms, like one called Digicel's Chocho Mobile, they were essential in getting aid to the people who were affected. Even with all the chaos and destruction, people could get money from their families abroad, and they could access aid from humanitarian organizations.
It shows how adaptable and resilient this technology can be.
It does.
But we've been talking mostly about reacting to crises. Can mobile money be used to prevent or lessen the impact of those crises before they even happen?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Remember that example from Nigeria we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
where they used those flood prediction models and mobile money to send cash to those villages before the floods hit? That's a perfect example of using technology proactively to help communities become more resilient.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about disaster relief. It's not just about managing the crisis after it happens, it's about preventing it in the first place.
It is.
This approach, it not only saves lives and reduces suffering, but it also helps minimize the economic damage that those disasters can cause. Are there other areas where mobile money is proving to be a useful tool?
Another area with tons of potential is agricultural development and food security. Smallholder farmers, the ones who are really critical for feeding their communities and contributing to economic growth, they often face huge challenges in getting the financial resources they need.
I can imagine. They might not have the collateral or credit history that traditional banks require, which basically shuts them out of the system.
You got it. But mobile money platforms can bridge that gap.
How so?
There are all these innovative programs now that use mobile money to give small loans to farmers.
Okay.
This lets them invest in their farms, buy things like seeds and fertilizers, and ultimately become more productive.
It's a great way to use technology to support farmers, boost how much food they can produce, and strengthen those rural economies.
Is it just about providing loans, though? Are there other ways they're using mobile money to help farmers?
Oh, it's way more than just loans. Mobile money can connect farmers directly to markets, giving them real-time information on prices for their crops, weather forecasts, and even best practices for sustainable farming.
Wow.
And it can help set up group savings schemes so farmers can pool their resources and support each other.
It's amazing how this one technology is creating this whole support system for farmers, helping them overcome all these traditional barriers and build more stable livelihoods.
It really is.
It's a perfect example of how technology, when it's used in a creative and human-centered way, can truly be a force for good.
Absolutely. And the possibilities just keep growing. We're seeing mobile money used for everything from distributing social welfare payments to making healthcare more accessible. It's a dynamic and rapidly evolving field. So it's not just about poverty, it's about making a more inclusive financial system for everyone. It's exciting to see how this simple technology, something a lot of us take for granted, is having such a huge impact on so many different parts of life.
And as more and more people around the world get access to mobile phones and the internet, the potential for positive change just keeps expanding. We're on the edge of mobile money revolution, one that has the power to change lives and reshape the world.
Okay, so we've seen the amazing potential of mobile money. But are there any downsides? Any potential risks that we need to be aware of? It seems like every solution, no matter how good it is, usually comes with its own set of challenges.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to get caught up in all the good stuff, but it's important to think critically and consider, like, what could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the biggest concerns when it comes to mobile money?
Well, one that comes up a lot is this idea of exclusion. Even though mobile phone use is pretty high in a lot of developing countries, there are still people, especially in rural areas or among the elderly, who don't even have basic phones.
That makes sense. We've been talking about how widespread mobile phones are, but it's not everyone, and we don't want to leave anyone behind.
Right, exactly. It's crucial to think about those folks who are the most marginalized and make sure they're not left out of the benefits of mobile money.
And even for those who do have phones, there can be other barriers.
Like what?
Well, things like literacy levels, digital literacy, or just not being comfortable with technology, all that can make it harder to use.
So it's not just about handing them a phone, it's about education and support, making sure they can use it safely and effectively.
Yeah, exactly. We need to invest in programs that teach people about digital stuff and create systems that are easy to use no matter how tech savvy someone is.
Okay, that makes sense. What else? Another big one is data privacy and security. As more and more financial stuff happens through mobile money, the risks get higher.
That's a good point. We've seen those big data breaches with other companies, so it's really important that these mobile money companies are doing everything they can to protect their users' information, right? Like from hackers and cyber criminals.
Absolutely. And it's not just about protecting data from outside threats. It's also about making sure the companies themselves aren't misusing or exploiting that data.
Yeah, that's really important. There need to be clear rules and oversight to make sure these companies are being responsible and ethical, respecting privacy and being transparent.
Exactly.
What about the role of governments and regulators? Is there any concern about too much power being concentrated in the hands of just a few companies?
That's another potential risk, yeah. The concentration of market power, where maybe just one or a small number of companies control the whole mobile money market in a country.
So they could become like monopolies.
Yeah, and that could stifle competition and innovation, which could lead to higher prices or fewer choices for consumers.
Yeah, that's not good. Competition usually pushes companies to be better.
Right. A healthy market with lots of competition is key to keeping prices down, improving quality, and encouraging innovation. We need regulations that promote competition and protect consumers from potentially being taken advantage of by these big companies.
Makes sense. Anything else?
One more thing that's important to think about is financial literacy and consumer protection. A lot of people using mobile money, it's their first time dealing with something like this.
Yeah.
So they might not fully understand all the terms and conditions, the fees, or even the potential risks of different types of transactions.
So they could be vulnerable to scams or exploitation if they don't understand what they're getting into.
Exactly. We need to have really good consumer education programs
How?
to help people understand financial stuff and know their rights and how to protect themselves. And the mobile money companies, they have a responsibility too, to make sure their products and services are clear, easy to understand, and safe for everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of work to do, but it also seems like a lot of these risks can be managed if there are good regulations, consumer education, and responsible practices from the companies themselves. It's about finding that balance between supporting innovation and protecting the people who use these services.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The whole mobile money landscape is constantly changing, and these issues are just going to become more important as the sector grows.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I've learned so much about the potential of mobile money to really change lives and tackle those big global challenges. But I also really appreciate how we talked about the potential risks too, and the need to be thoughtful and careful as this technology keeps evolving.
It's been great talking about this with you. It's such an exciting field, and I'm really curious to see what the future holds for mobile money.
Me too. I'm especially curious about those newer technologies like blockchain and artificial intelligence.
All right.
How could they make mobile money even better and create even more opportunities for inclusion? What do you think the future looks like?
Well, one area that has huge potential is using blockchain. Imagine a mobile money system that's built on blockchain, where transactions are super secure, transparent, and almost instant, even across borders.
So sending money across the world would be as easy as sending a text.
Exactly. And blockchain could also help with those data privacy and security concerns we were talking about.
That would be huge.
Another thing I'm excited about is how mobile money can be combined with other financial services.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so imagine being able to access things like microinsurance, microloans, even investment products, all through your phone, no matter how much money you make or where you live.
Wow. That would really level the playing field and give people so much more control over their financial lives.
It would. And with AI and machine learning becoming more advanced, we could even see mobile money platforms offering financial products and services that are tailored to each person's specific needs.
It's mind-blowing to think about how technology is not only changing how we deal with money, but it's also opening up all these possibilities for people who've been left out of the traditional financial system.
It really is. And I think we're just getting started. As more people around the world get connected, the possibilities are endless.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We started with something as simple as a dumb phone and ended up talking about blockchain and AI, all within the context of how mobile money is changing lives, helping communities develop, and making us rethink what's possible with technology.
It has been a journey.
What I'm taking away from all this is that innovation doesn't have to be fancy or high-tech to be powerful.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that are easy to use, accessible, and meet people where they are.
Absolutely. And mobile money is a perfect example of that. It started out of necessity, was created by the very people who needed it, and now it's a global phenomenon that's changing the world. It's a story of human resilience, creativity, and the belief that things can get better.
It's a story that gives me hope. It reminds me that even with all the challenges in the world, there are people out there finding innovative solutions, driven by compassion and a desire to make a difference.
It's a reminder that we all have a part to play in shaping the future.
So to everyone listening, if you're feeling inspired, we encourage you to learn more about mobile money, check out the resources that are out there, and see how you can get involved.
There's so much you can do, whether it's supporting organizations like GiveDirectly, advocating for policies that promote financial inclusion, or just telling others about the power of this technology. Every little bit helps.
We believe that even simple solutions can tackle big problems, and that when we work together, we can create a better future for everyone.
Thank you for joining us on this amazing journey. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep believing in the power of human ingenuity to make a difference.